It's Tuesday. The sun is shining. The United States government is talking about UFOs. I have never believed less in UFOs than when the United States government started talking about them. But it's a good day. It's a good day. Because I have finished the book Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have finished the book Pride and Prejudice by Jane Karen Austen. Jane Karen Austen. I did a previous video where I had talked about this book before finishing it. I said how much I hated it. And I said that my opinion of it was unlikely to change. I was in a dark place reading that book. I thought about dropping that book like a ton of bricks, but something in me, something neurotic and dark, made me persist. And I once I start a book, I don't like to quit it. I can count the number of books that I've stopped reading on one hand. So I toughed it out, and I finished Pride and Prejudice. And no, my opinion did not change whatsoever. This book is a chore of just uncommon magnitude. What a chore. But I won't say that finishing it didn't bring a little perspective, a little wisdom to my life. Women have been rewriting some version of Pride and Prejudice for the last 200 years on fan fiction forums across the internet. I don't know if it's all sort of a derivative from this, like if it all branches from Pride and Prejudice, or if this is just one of those many works that sort of encapsulates some real life phenomenon. Once I got to like the last 10 pages, I was like, oh, so that's why it's called Pride and Prejudice. Because Mr. Darcy is so prideful, and Miss Elizabeth Bennet was so prejudiced against him. It's the standard tale of, boy meets girl, and they take an immediate sort of dislike to each other, like, oh, he's real full of himself, that guy is, and I don't like him. Oh, she's a strong-headed, willful woman, and I don't like her either. But underneath, there's a simmering, undeniable sexual tension, an undeniable attraction that their hate is just, that's part of the chemical involved. Like, I've never experienced that myself, I don't think. But again, maybe this is some phenomenon. This is just the documentation of some real life phenomenon. But part of me thinks that this is just sort of the wellspring from which landfills of fan fiction now litter the digital hellscape. Just reading this, there is so much devoted to just the internal machinations, the minute internal machinations of this specific relationship dynamic, almost to like a neurotic level, to which they get into all the little manners and how their relationships affect the manners, and how manners affect the relationship. It's almost, after a while, after like page 300 and something of nothing happening but the deep delving into Elizabeth Bennet's psyche, you get the feeling that Jane Karen Austen was a neurotic. If I had a time machine, I wouldn't go back to kill Hitler. I wouldn't go back to talk to Jesus. I would go back and see how Jane Austen was living in England at the time, to see what drove her to such madness. Was it this, sort of what they call the patriarchal attitude towards women? Is she suffering through some patriarchal constraint, much like, is the corset in sync with the social mores of the time, suffocating both the blood to her brain, but also her, you know, her sense of will, her sense of freedom? Or is she just, is this some sort of self-imposed madness, that the madness is enjoyable to women at the time? Is it fun? Is it fun to be so obsessed over whether your sister has her honor taken, as Elizabeth Bennet does over Lydia Bennet? Is it like part of the fun to we got to scramble to get Lydia married to Mr. Wickham so her honor remains intact? I don't know. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that I wrought that much speculation from the book. It's a miracle that the book made me think that much, because of how like impenetrable so much of it is. This book is so obnoxiously, for one, it's like very condensed. She's trying to always condense like 12 thoughts into one paragraph. The writing is so unspecific at times in who it's referring to, in who it's speaking about. There's so many ancillary characters that sort of drift in and out with under that very unspecific mode of narrative, and it just like, it makes it hard to tell who is who. What was there was something else that it's so important that I wanted to talk about. I'm having a brain fart. Son of a gun. Oh, yes, I remember. You stuck with it. And now we're here. Okay. So it pains me in what I'm going to say, it sort of pains me in that I'm sort of aligning with a sort of very proudly stupid Reddit style contingent of people who, any book that might be, you know, just a little bit difficult or a little bit, you know, stylistically outside the norm, or the subject matter is outside of whatever spaceship laser beam horseshit that they subsist upon. Like, it pains me to sort of agree with that sensibility a little bit, but finishing this book put me in that mind space, in that clarity should be incorporated into the metric of what is considered good writing. I think clarity is like the most, or one of the most important things to good writing, and communicating ideas in a clear, understandable way. That doesn't preclude like flowery sentences or long sentences or stylistic deviations or experimentations. I don't think it necessarily precludes all that, but as much as there are people who pride themselves on not reading difficult books, I think there are just as many people who sort of pride themselves on suffering through wordy, difficult piles of horseshit like Pride and Prejudice. And that's I think I'm probably more one of those people. Like, I probably lean more towards that type of person. But I think you know, I don't know. I think there's some validity when someone says, this book is too difficult, I don't understand it, it's not good. This book lent some validity to that point of view, in that it was on Jane Austen to fucking plan 200 years ahead. She should have planned 200 years ahead and should have known that this was going to be just impossible to wade through. She should have known. And I don't know. I'm less compelled to go to bat for books like this again. Like, I'm less compelled to go to bat for Pride and Prejudice or Ulysses or Faulkner. Like, it's always been my natural inclination for, you know, when people are just sort of like, well, I just like to stick to my spaceship laser beam horseshit. I don't know, whatever people read. these days. I'm more sympathetic to that now. I don't know. That's what I wanted to say. That's the chestnut that was stifling me. It's time to move on to other things. It's time to put aside Pride and Prejudice. I think next I am going to read one of these more rollicking space adventures. I'm going to read Starship Troopers next. I'm going to read Starship Troopers. I went through a thing where I watched every single piece of Starship Troopers media, every movie, every sequel, including the... well, I didn't watch the cartoon TV show, but I watched the animated films, and now I want to read the book. Very good. Goodbye.